Good evening, everyone. So it's a new live this week and it's a new episode of Swift Community. So as you can see, today's guest is Antoine Vanderly. Welcome, Antoine.
Hey, hello. How are you doing?
I'm doing good, and you?
Yeah, doing great. I have a little cheat to not have to watch the Eurovision Song Festival tonight. So, I can't be more happy.
So you've seen on the miniature and on the title that the topic of the day is going to be result builders. So maybe before we begin, I guess you have your article from your blog on the website. You're going to give us a little introduction on what are result builders and what were their old names, because some people might already know, I've heard about it, but with the old name.
Yeah, that's a trick question. No, yeah, it used to be known as function builders with a little underscore in front of it, which often means that either it's a private API or it's a functionality that is still coming up. They're still working on it in a way. So yeah, we have had the opportunity to work with function builders in the past, but they weren't really great. They weren't what they are today. Um, but yeah, today we're going to look at what result builders are, which you can now use in Swift 5.4 in the latest version of Xcode. And the way we're going to do that in a bit is through Xcode, through live coding. And yeah, the thing I want to let you know that all the things I'm going to discuss is kind of described in this article, in which I kind of explain to you like what are result builders. In fact, it's good to point out that result builders are something you likely have touched already if you've done any Swift UI development, because this beautiful body that we all know is a result builder. In fact, if you look at the definition of body in the Swift UI view, you can see that it's being marked with something that looks like a property wrapper, but in this case, it's a result builder called view builder. I'll show you later what it exactly means. I guess I'll show this in the Xcode project later as well, but I kind of like to show it this way because it's more clear. These are like a list of constraints written in code, and I'll show you how it looks in the simulator in a bit. This is kind of how you would do it without result builders. It's kind of okay-ish, but it would be kind of nice if you don't have to work with that array, and if you could like define them just like you could with Swift UI and building views. And this is how it looks once we're done. So hopefully I am able to do this all from my mind, and otherwise I'll cheat a bit and look at this blog post. But yeah, this is what we're gonna do today, Vincent.
Exactly, and as you said, so result builders, along with property wrappers, they are one of the two, we could say, underlying building block of SwiftUI. So what we're going to do basically is to build kind of a SwiftUI-like syntax, but for a different domain than displaying views.
Exactly. Yeah. So what do you think? Shall we get started?
I think we should get started. I think people are super interested in the topic. And so I haven't said it, but I think you're all familiar with it in the chat. This is a live. So any question that you have, please ask it in the chat. This way, Antoine and I, we can try to answer it directly during the live.
Yeah, make me sweat. Come up with the questions. Yeah, all right. So let's first see what we have here. We have a very simple project set up with a home view controller, and if I run it, you can see what we currently have in the simulator. I can make it a bit bigger. It's also a great opportunity for me to show off a little app I've created. It's Rocket Sim, and it kind of allows you to compare a design you have. So I prepared this session, and I created a picture of the auto layout implementation. And as you can see right now, the code is kind of perfect because we don't really see any difference. So how does the code look? Well, it's super simple. We have a label and a logo, which we want to lay out using auto layout code. And I created a little enum so we can switch the way we want to set up the constraints. Currently, it's set to old-fashioned, which means that it's using the setup auto layout in the old way method. Beautiful naming. And yeah, this is the code we know from the article.
Okay, so that's code where you are setting constraints and then you're like appending them to an array of constraints. So you're doing this building the traditional Swift way.
Yeah, exactly. And yeah, I want to point out that we have different ways of setting the constraints. So one is just a regular single constraint. We also have a Boolean where we can configure whether we want to show the logo on the top or whether we want to align it in the middle, in the center. We also have an optional. So if we want to set a fixed logo size, we can append that as well. So here we're appending an array of constraints to the constraints array. And lastly, this is a little convenience method. I can quickly jump into it. What it basically does, it's constraining each edge of the view
Oh yeah.
to its super view.
And I think what's interesting to see here is that it's kind of a method where we are taking some individual values and putting them in an array, but we still need to do some logic, so we cannot just pass in an array literal. We have to do some logic, and so we need to manage a variable, append to it, then return the variable.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. So the thing I basically now want to do is switch setup mode to result builder and run the project. And if you look at the method, it's right now completely empty. So
It needs
I
to be
don't think we
implemented.
will. We won't see much
We
of
can
the
see that
result we want. Yeah, you can see Rocket Sim is clearly showing that we did a wrong job here. So this is not what we want. So yeah, we can start implementing the resale builder. Yeah, normally I would do a second screen like this. I wonder. I think this could work, right? What do you
Yeah, I
think, Vincent?
think on the right you can hide the inspector on the right. This way we have a little bit more room. And
Gotcha.
yeah,
That's smart.
to me it's
Maybe we
looking
can hide this
readable.
one here.
If you
Yeah,
can't
maybe
read
this
it,
way.
let us know in the chat. But to me it's looking good.
All right, perfect. Yeah, so I wrote down the steps to give you an idea myself, like a target to
What's
work
the
on.
plan?
Yeah, so I want to first create the actual result builder instance, which we're then going to use throughout a static method on NS layout constraint. Basically, we want to mimic this code a bit, but then instead of the constraint array, we want to pass in like a closure that results in the constraints. And then eventually we're going to add extra functionalities step by step until we added back all the constraints we saw in the old-fashioned way.
Okay, so let's begin with the instance and let's see actually what a result builder looks like in code.
Exactly. Yeah. So we start with the result builder attribute, and then we can basically just create a structure auto layout builder. But will directly show you which method is at least required to implement. That's a pity. I can't fully show it. Maybe. Nah. So what it says, it's requiring us to implement the build block. Yeah, this is kind of the bare bone basic of a result builder. And in this case, we need to tell the auto layout builder which type he needs to expect to work with. It's a generic type component. In our case, we're going to work with NS layout constraints. And this is a variadic argument. So that basically means you can pass in one argument or multiple, comma separated. So it means that we will result eventually in an array of constraints. So we can return components, and that should be enough for the project to build. This is like the most simple implementation of a result builder, I guess you can make.
What's nice is that we can start, like, if you know the syntax of property wrappers, we can see some similarities because it's just a basic Swift type. It's annotated with @ResultBuilder, and you need to implement at least one method. So kind of like, property wrapper, you annotate with @property wrapper, and then you implement a wrap value. It's kind of has this very similar vibe.
Yeah, no, totally. So yeah, and it's nice that the compiler helps you, so you know where to get started. And I want to give you a tip already. What I like to do is explore like what are the methods you can add to a result builder. The first thing I did is I clicked on result builder. That doesn't work. So if anybody's working at Apple and sees that, I expected this to show me the methods. The other way I did was clicking on build plug. Didn't really work. Jump to definition. Didn't really work. Show documentation. Not really what I wanted. So I guess the solution is to press Control Space, and then you get the autocomplete for result builders. And this shows you kind of all the building blocks you have for a result builder, from which a few we're going to handle later on.
Yeah, and what's interesting is that what you can start to infer is that so the function we have implemented here, it's pretty simple. It's kind of like the identity function, but the useful information is in the type, basically.
Yeah, exactly. Totally. So it's all about the custom type you provide, and that brings you all kinds of options. You can go extreme or you can go simple. And today, in terms of result builders, I think we're going to keep it simple. So let's go to step 2, which basically means we want to create an extension on NS layout constraint. And it's going to be a static method, just like we have here on the left side.
Yeah.
And instead of an array of constraints, we're going to use our custom result builder. And we do that by using auto layout builder. No autocomplete for it, unfortunately. But it's as simple as this. And we need to use the actual method we used to use, and we call the closure. So let's see what we did. We created a property which we marked with the attribute for our custom result builder, which basically tells, hey, this closure is going to make use of the result builder. This is the same as the previous definition we've shown of the var body in a SwiftUI view. And then we define a closure which basically comes down to returning an array of constraints. And the nice thing about that is that we kind of use the same method as we used here, but then with the constraints that are returning the result of the result builder.
And what's nice to see here is that so the return type of the closure array of NS layout constraints is the same type than the return of the method build block in the auto layout builder type.
Exactly. Yeah, those match. So this is basically all we need to get started and use our actual extension. So we can go here and we can activate constraints. Just simply want to point out I got the final result in my project as well, which is why you see the underscore activate. This is no hidden gem or something. I don't have access to any hidden code from Apple. It's just my own way of putting that old code away. So either way, we have the activate method, and as it's a trailing closure, we can just define it like this. We now basically enter the closure that we defined here. And what we can do now is copy over the first constraint, which we have here, and paste it right into our result builder. And see what it does, actually. So the constraint is basically saying like, hey, I want to center the logo to the center of my container view. And as you can see, that worked. It's not looking beautiful yet. It's
but
definitely not yet.
Something has happened, at least. So we can see that something is indeed working.
Exactly. Yeah. The result builder is doing something, which is good. So that's great. But yeah, the second part, we want to make that work as well. So let's copy that over. Obviously, we don't have the array anymore, so we remove that part. part. And now the compiler will tell us like, hey, closure containing control flow statements cannot be used with result builder, auto layout builder, which again confirms that our auto layout builder is being used. But yeah, it also tells us like, hey, it tells us there's no build block that handles if statements. So what we're going to do is we're going to add that build block. And so we're going to use the tip again, control space, which gives you the autocomplete. And yeah, then we can look at the several methods. And yeah, this one is kind of funny because it's built out of two methods. It's built either first component or the second component. And this basically allows you to handle if statements, because an if statement basically always compares a left side and a right side. So you could see this as the left side, and this as the right side.
So we have the if branch and the else branch.
Exactly. Yeah. But yeah, now we're going to run into an interesting part, because if we want to do exactly the same as we did before, return component, I think we'll eventually run into issues, but let's see if it works. Cannot pass an array of type NS layout constraint as variadic arguments of type NS layout constraint. So the thing we run into right now is that we have defined our type to be NS layout constraint right here.
Yeah.
And now we suddenly have an array of layout constraints. So we need to bring those types together. And this is always a bit complicated to wrap your head around. But it's pretty well explained in my article. Let me see where it comes. Yeah, here it is. Yeah. So what we need to do is we need to kind of bring those two types together, a single layout constraint and an array of layout constraints. And we can do that by defining a protocol, which is basically layout group, where there's a property. And in case of a single layout constraint, we can just create an array in return self. And if it's an array, we can return the array itself. So yeah, I like to copy this code, which makes it a bit easier for me. Let's place it right in the middle here. And then we can use the layout group. That was expected. Okay, well, let's assume we have it. I got it. I got it in my code because I made sure this project was actually working before. So we can now say layout group.
Yeah, and this part, it's not basically like linked directly to result builder. It's the fact that in Swift, it's a bit not hard, but like you said, it's a bit clunky to reconciliate variadic arguments and array types, basically.
Yeah, it's kind of stupid. You would expect them to be similar, or at least, it should be easier to bring them together. So far I didn't find a good way to do it. So what was it again? I think it was components.constraints, right? Let me see. Should be this. Or is it? Oh, it's an array. Okay, so this is what we need to do. Gotcha. All right, yeah, because we're in an array. Okay. Yeah, all right. Okay, gotcha. Yeah, so it's an array of layout groups. So we can't ask the array itself for constraints, but we can ask them separately for the constraints. So we can do flat map. Exactly, and that works.
And it also shows, I think, one of the maybe difficulties when you make a result builder is that you often like find yourself in situation where you have an error. The compiler is not really helping you a lot in the error message, and you're left a little bit like on your own to understand what's really happening and what's the good way to try and fix it.
Yeah, exactly. And I've written the article, which was obviously after me trying it out for some time. When I was building this auto layout builder the first time, I really had to dig into like, hey, okay, so why isn't it working, and how can I solve it? And step by step, you find out true experience or true like Stack Overflow or other blog posts, what the solution is, and eventually you'll find out that this is the solution. So let's see so what this brings. Well, the build succeeds, so that's a good sign.
Yeah.
And as you can see, we now have the Boolean check here as well. And yeah, as just to get us to understand how it actually works, we can comment this out for a bit. We can see that it doesn't work like expected. We can do it the other way around. I wish the compiler would now state that this was more what I expected it to do.
I think they've improved the error message a bit since the first release in 2019, but
Yeah.
yeah, I guess it must be a challenge from the compiler point of view, I guess, to really diagnose the issue.
Yeah, exactly. Most definitely, and it's already quite in a good state. Once when I was looking at this and how to implement it, I was helped quite a bit. As you can see right now as well, that it's helping you to state what you need to do in a way. But yeah, the thing I wonder, if we comment out this part, now we only have the left side of the if statement in a way, and we only use this build either block.
Yeah, normally, I'm not sure. Maybe you need to
Funny,
use
right?
build optional when you want to do this one, or if you don't have only one, because
Yeah, all right, gotcha. Yeah. Well, we need to implement build optional either way.
but
So
on this one, it seems that there is a fix me on the error message. So
shall we just try that out?
what is this going to do?
Yeah, you're right. It's
Oh yeah.
build optional. All right. So no, well, let's implement that. I kind of like to put that in the second spot. So we have an array, and then we need to. Well, I think we need to map again because we start with an array.
So we actually had the question in the chat: if we remove else, would just either first work? And so the answer is no. You need to have the two ethers for it to work.
Yeah, exactly. Oh, funny. So that was one of the questions. That's good.
There is a slight delay between what we are seeing and the live diffusion.
Yeah. Okay, that's great. Well, I guess we answered that then. But yeah. So what we did here is we basically implemented it the same part again. But the funny thing here to me is that the compiler suggested us to use this array of a strongly typed NS layout constraint instead of the layout group, and I guess it's still working. So that's funny to me because those types are now not non-async. You see what I mean?
Yeah.
But let's keep it like this. It's working, and that's what we want. I'm not the type of guy to really sort out the things if it's just working. It makes you move faster. So this one is now not working, and that's because we don't have to build either. So let's enable that and see if it builds. All right, and then let's run the code again. And the thing we expect, we have the align logo top, which is set to true, which we saw in the very beginning. So I guess the only thing we should see is that the logo is actually visible because we use the save area layout guide. So that brings it down the top of the phone. So let's see. All right,
Yeah.
that looks good. Now we can actually see if. All right. Yeah, so the thing is, we don't have the fixed size optional implemented yet. But yeah, as a matter of fact, we just implemented a build optional builder block. So I guess it should be as easy as just copying over this code. And that should just work. Do we need to
remove the array, I guess? Yeah.
Comma. And the funny thing is that these are now just two single constraints. Where we no longer pass in an array. Basically, this is a single build block, and this is a single build block, and they both go through this method after the optional is unwrapped. So if we run this code, we can see that the logo is at least.
We do have the fixed size, and we have an interesting question. So Shankar is asking, what if we have switch cases instead of if-else condition? And actually, I'm not sure that switch cases are supported in result builders.
It's an interesting one. Yeah, in a
Let's
way, it's an if statement, but differently
try it.
defined.
Let's try and see what it does.
Yeah, let's do it. I think we can switch fixed logo size, right? In that case. You need to help me here, Vincent. I never really switch optionals.
So you have either some or none.
So, and then it's let logo,
yeah.
right?
So Frank is saying build either works for switch too.
Okay, all right.
So let's see.
Yeah, okay. So well, we can just use a break and see if it works.
And then there is none and break.
All right. So this is an interesting learning, right? We can't use a break, but yeah. What would we do in the case of none? You know.
If there
Or,
is,
or can we switch a boolean?
Yeah, we can case true and case false.
for the sake of testing, right? Yeah, that's great. It's funny, I never did this. Yeah, there's only one way to find out. Okay, I guess that works.
Okay, so it does work.
Builder is happy, so let's try it out. Awesome. Okay.
Perfect.
Well, I guess I learned two things now. We can switch a boolean, and we can use switch statements in a result builder. So yeah, that's great. This works.
Yeah.
Learning along the way. That's perfect. All right. So we're not there yet. We still have this hello world hiding there in the top corner. He doesn't want to be seen, but we want to bring him back. So we have this helper method I showed earlier. We only need this part actually. So I'm going to copy that over here as well. Place that here. See what it does. That's working. And run it. And there it is.
Okay. So we have managed to put so label constraint for anchoring to, and this returns an array of constraints, and they get processed by the build block function.
Yeah, exactly. I was expecting us to implement this method, build array, because this method is returning an array, but somehow it still works. But I guess we need this method. Let's see what the compiler says. We were to define this like an array. Is it working? You see what I mean? But maybe it's using the variadic group. It could be.
I'm guessing like layout group. Is it an array behind the scenes? No, you still need to call constraint on it for it to work.
Yeah, it's not a collection type. So yeah, no, I guess the build block itself uses it because if you look at my article, I think I even suggest you to use build array, or maybe I'm explaining it here actually. Unfortunately, as the method describes, this only enables support for loops that combine the result into a single result. We don't use an iterator, but a convenient method to run a collection directly, so we need to write some more custom code. I wrote my own answer. So yeah, I guess if we want to use a for loop, then it's different. I'm not sure if there's a good use case right now for a for loop. We could maybe try out a for each. Yeah, just like that. Let's see if that would work. This is probably the answer. So that doesn't work, but what if for in?
I think for loops.
So the for each wouldn't work, but the for loop would. And this should only run once. So let's, for the sake of this example, use this constraint.
And if I'm correct, the one control structure that is not supported in a result builder is the while loop. This one, I
Wow.
think,
Yeah.
I think especially because of this, because of the while through.
Yeah. It would. It's kind of weird as well, right? To use a while. Yeah. I mean, I guess for our example of constraints, there aren't many use cases where you would
Yeah,
do repetitive work in such way. But yeah, it's interesting. Yeah, I don't know if you were to have like a lorem ipsum builder or something, like random ipsum.
but
Well,
something that could be interesting is to see. So in the for loop, in the range, if, for instance, instead of 1, you try to pass in like a random integer, I'm wondering like if the for loop needs to know at compile time the number of iterations that there is going to be or not.
no, I
So
don't
it
think
seems to
so.
work actually.
It's more.
Okay, so
Yeah,
it's
I think it's more about like how to handle for loops, and
yeah,
not per se like how to predict how the for loop will run. Um, so yeah, right. But yeah, either way, I guess this is working, and yeah, like you see, it's looking quite the same. There's yeah, the only difference is the background color.
yeah.
I did that on purpose, but I guess this is enough to say that we've created an auto layout builder, which is awesome. Um,
And so
so yeah,
we can see like if we compare with the original code that just uses like we'd say like raw Swift, that the shape is the same, but some of the syntax that was like not annoying but that felt a little bit like boilerplate, we've been able to
yeah.
remove it, and it's all encapsulated into the builder now.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and we showed even different ways with a switch and a for loop. So yeah, this is already unique content on top of the blog post, which is great. But yeah, I guess I kind of like the flexibility of not having to think about adding it to an array. Keeping an array mutable. It's kind of an extra code smell in a way that you have to append the contents of.
Exactly.
You can get rid of those statements, which is kind of nice. And if you look at the implementation of the actual result builder, it isn't that's super hard. It's quite simple in a way. Other than that, we have that layout group on top of it, which
Yeah.
was kind of like that was almost the hardest part of the whole implementation.
Yeah, I think it's
But
interesting
yeah,
what you said of not having to have this extra variable, because it's kind of the same reasoning that we have in Swift when we say you should use map rather than a for loop to transform an array of value. It's kind of the same logic of encapsulating and going down a road that is more and more declarative.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, I'm a super fan of these kind of things. The same with property wrappers. They're super nice to encapsulate a bit of more logic that you often use in a way. But yeah, Vincent, I was thinking we could take it a step further,
Yeah,
because
let's
one
see.
thing you often do is you add a subview and directly append constraints to the actual constraints that are already
That's right.
active on the container view, right? So yeah, what I prepared is another setup method with an add subview extension method. Um, so yeah, I want to quickly just demo like how can you benefit of result builders in different contexts. So we're gonna change this to add subview result builder, and then run the code. You will see that well, this is still Rocket Sim. Yeah, there's nothing much to see, and that's because we need to get started again. Yeah, so we want to add the subviews, but in a way that we can directly add constraints to it as well. So we're going to make an extension on UI view. We're going to make it add subview, view UI view, and then we're going to say auto layout builder. And we can just say add subview view. So we're calling this on the container view, right? So
Yeah,
we basically say
self
container
basically.
view dot subview, and then we can say it won't be the final implementation, but I want to show you how it works and how we walk through this. I think there was a single constraint that's easy to use. In this case, the label. So let's use that as an example and see if we can center the label with this new extension method. So we have a view, add subview, and here it is with the result builder. So we say the label, constraints of view. So basically, this is a super simple implementation where we directly allow you to add constraints after adding the subview. So I want to see whether we can see the label in the center of the screen right now. Boom. Okay, that's working. Yeah, this is pretty awesome, right? So now we can actually do what we want.
And so what's
Yeah,
nice is that
the thing.
we're kind of able, like in the way at the call site, we've put together adding the subviews and then adding the constraint that makes sense for this particular subview.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and one thing I often like doing is making it a bit more generic. Yeah, in a way, this is it's not per se a retain cycle, but we escape the closure here, which I don't always like. So what we can do is we can create a protocol subview. It's a lower v subview containing, and we can say subview containing, and then extension subview containing where it is UI view, and let me think this is true. Because the thing, what I like to do is, pass in the label and the container view to this method, right? So that we basically can do
Oh yes,
this instead
and you
of
don't have to use self.
exactly. And you won't escape the closure in a way. It's kind of a nice practice in a way. So we can copy this method, and we say add subview. Let me see. So we want to have two views here. Those will be returned right here. Those two, and then we want to say self. Well, self is the second, right? So this should be this one, and this
It's
should
the
be that
container
one.
view and view. Yeah, that makes sense.
Now I need to think through because we need to make it generic, right? So we want to make sure that the label is actually seen as the label.
Oh, that is indeed a UI label. So
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, you could actually do if statements based on a property of the label and those kind of things.
So maybe you're gonna
Yeah,
want to
so
use self with a capital S, like
yeah, exactly. Yeah, so the container view could be this, I guess, and that would already bring the container view in. And
and then
I
you need the
think,
generic, indeed.
I think it could be as simple as this, where
Yeah,
it could be UI view, and this could be view, also be view. I think this should be it,
yeah, it's looking good to me.
right?
And so is the compiler happy? Yeah.
Yeah, the compiler is happy. Yeah, so you could say like if a label point numbers of lines is 1, I want to set the height anchor constraint equal to constant maybe 20. You could do those kind of things. Whereas before you could do it as well. but yeah, that would be just a little less nice, I would say. Um, so we would do this. This is the old one, right? You could still do the same. So you could ask yourself, like, why would you do this? But I guess the thing I like is that when you work with closures and you can prevent yourself from escaping the closure and reference self, it's just a bit nicer. And in this case, it's synchronous, so it doesn't really matter. But in the case of an asynchronous closure, you need to think about retain cycles and those kind
Yeah,
of things.
that makes
Um,
sense.
so, so yeah, this is just just a nice example of what you can do with an auto layout builder and how it can fit in your method body together with other views and generics.
Yeah, I think it's a really interesting. I had never seen like this kind of syntax before, but it makes sense, and it makes me wonder like if at WWDC we are going to see some new UIKit APIs that rely on result builders or not.
Yeah, I guess there are a few other result builders. There's one in developer tools framework I coincidentally run into, and obviously the Swift UI ones are the most obvious ones. But yeah, I can take this as an opportunity to go to the bottom where I'm linking to a repository containing several examples. So and this is quite an old one. I think it also contained function builder examples at the time. But here you can basically go through and see, well, get some inspiration of what you can do. You know, like
Yeah,
you can see like a schema for an API or object fields, and the GraphQL one is obviously maybe quite known and an easy one or an easy one to understand if you're working with GraphQL. But it's super nice if you want to do something, and you can look at those examples and also see how they are implemented under the hood.
indeed, and and see all the possible use cases because they are the one that comes to mind very easily. Like for instance, I think HTML it was probably like one of the first one that was released. But then, for instance, there is one about NS attributed string, which makes a lot of sense. Stuff also about testing, for instance. So
Yeah,
there is like a lot of room to build kind of like helpers around APIs that are known to be maybe like not that great to work with.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, you know, I like this one as well. It makes it so much easier to understand in a way. Yeah, you know, it's just reading code instead of understanding code in a way. Yeah, and this one is nice as well. Given when then PDD
For
style.
people doing
Yeah,
testing, yeah.
yeah. Yeah, you know, there can be a lot of inspiration. Yeah, this one is nice as well. And I tried using this for Rocket Sim. It basically allows you to define the menu structure. You know, the menu you see in Mac apps in the top. But it makes it easier to understand because you have like an about menu with children. You know, it makes it much more natural. So for
Yeah.
readability in your project, it could be a great use case.
Yeah, because basically, I guess that the API for menus on AppKit it's some kind of like returning arrays and this kind of things. So a very like recursive structure, but using collections, which is yeah, like when you're starting to like nest collection into one another,
Yeah,
it's not that great.
yeah, that's the trouble indeed. Yeah, exactly. So yeah,
And I'm thinking if we come back to the example, there is maybe one thing we haven't said, and actually, I mean, I'm not sure it's the case, but basically, when you are in a result builder, the only thing you're allowed to write on each line is returning a part of the result. So, for instance, like you couldn't like increment a variable or change the state of a variable in a result builder. If am I right or not?
well, we're working with static methods, right? So we
No,
could say
I was
like
meaning actually when you use the builder. So, for instance, fixed logo size. If you try to set it to false in your result builder, is that possible or
ah,
not?
gotcha. I don't think so. I think it's also not possible in SwiftUI if I recall
Yeah,
correctly. So Yeah, so you want to say like just before we go into the switch, we
Exactly.
set it to false. No, that won't
If
happen. Yeah, it doesn't
it
give
fails
us the right
indeed.
compiler. Yeah, there was another question I got from Daniel Steinberg the other day, and it was kind of an interesting one. He said like, can I pass in uh, a variable? Like say we only want to allow like max limit of constraints. I don't know, very weird example, but say we want,
You want to have some state in the builder.
exactly, and then basically in this initializer. Funny that it's auto-completing. It shouldn't work, as far as I know. There you go. Well, the auto-completion is working. That's one thing. Yeah, but the result builders cannot have arguments, and I think that's good to know. It could be a limitation in this case with constraints. It might not be super valuable, but say you have an HTML result builder and you only want to allow paragraphs and images or something, you can't pass that in as an argument. Obviously, what you could do probably is setting a static variable like this. I think that should work. And then
But then what's
do
tricky, I guess, so you need to set
and
the
the tricky
value.
the tricky part if your auto layout builder is used for multiple threads.
Yeah,
I guess in case of auto layout constraints, you will always be on the main thread, but in other cases, you have a static var, which means it's globally set around your app session, so it will affect all the result builders and not only the result builder used right here. So I guess there might be a use case in case of that you want to set this config value for your whole app, but otherwise you might run into edge cases
yeah,
and not consistent code.
yeah. I would definitely like also advise against it. And if you need an argument, as we've seen, in a way, like can you? No, you cannot pass in the argument as an argument of the closure because like the result builder
Uh,
doesn't have access to it.
exactly. Yeah, we
So
can't
yeah.
read it out.
Yeah, I mean everything is static. So basically, like it's kind of in the name of it, and if you try to like work around it, you're going to open yourself to some potentially like bad behavior.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Yeah, you don't want that. But what's interesting is to look at other parts. If declaratives will be called on the partial result from the outermost block statement to produce the final returned result. So
This one can be
let's just
interesting. Yeah.
yeah, right. Let's just see what it does.
So this one, from
Maybe
what
we
I
can say,
understand, it's all in the overloads. The idea is to implement like several versions of build final results with a different return type, and this way you can
yeah,
return something differently depending on the context.
yeah, exactly, yeah, but yeah, you don't want to do that. But yeah, let's just see. What if we do this, right? So I guess what this will do in our example, I think prefix will only take the first element, right? Yeah,
Um,
containing the initial elements of the collection. So what it would mean is that we will only have a Swiftly logo that is centered. That's what I expect it to do. What do you think?
so you have array component prefix of one. So yeah, I feel it should be the same thing than using first, I guess, using prefix
Yeah,
of
right.
one.
Yeah, but I'm mostly curious what the build final result will do. So I guess we can just try it out. I guess what this does. Okay, it's not what I expected. Oh, but we're not in this method. Obviously, we are still in the other setup method. Let me. Okay. Oh no, this is still the wrong one. Sorry.
I
you
mean, we
you
do
missed the
have a
live
lot of
audience
codes.
now. Sitting in the yeah, in the audience and raising the hand like, hey, this is still wrong. But yeah, I guess this does what we thought it would do, right? So the only constraint that passed through is the first constraint because we prefixed it to one. So
And so we have a question. So I'm not sure if it's linked to directly the build final result, but it could be. So it's, does result builder support different data types? Say input is int and return string. So I would say, of course, the
yeah,
build block methods, they can transform the thing.
so input int and an output string.
Yeah, that was the example. So yeah, I think it's definitely doable.
Let's just try it out, right? So we get an input int go to string. So this would be is it again joint, right? Oh wait, those are integers. So
Yeah, you need to map them to strings, and then so you're going to.
it works either this way, right?
It seems to build, and now if we try to
Seems
use
to work.
it,
Yeah. So yeah, now we need to make a method that we can use. So we give it as input the ints. Well, we could say an extension of string.
yeah, I think for instance, an example of this in a real world application would be, for instance, an NS attributed string builder, while the input would be some kind of tuple with, I guess, a string and then some attributes, and it would return an NS attributed string. And so
Yeah, exactly. Would this work? Don't think so, right? Well, for the sake of this example, let's do like from numbers.
to string,
Yeah, right. And then
and it returns. So it's just going to do return numbers.
oh yeah, of course. Oops, the simplest things, right? Yeah. Well, let's say just say label text is string from numbers. Oh,
And so here
yeah.
you could put in your closure 1 and then 2 and then 3. Yeah.
All right.
So it's a basic use case, but it shows that, yeah,
Boom.
it does work.
Wow, that was funny. Yeah,
Yeah.
these things work. This is what you can do.
And Frank is saying also that you can also add indeed this kind of like adapters using build expression if you want an adapter for the input, and build final result if you want an adapter for the output.
Make an emoji to string builder. It's a nice way to end it, right?
I'm curious to see what it's going to look like.
This would be from emojis.
Uh, can you do an initializer that takes a result builder as an argument? Um, for me, anywhere you can use a closure, you can decorate it with a result builder, I would say. For instance, in SwiftUI, there are HStack, VStack, they are inits. They all take result builders. I'm not sure if I've understood the question correctly. Oh, okay, so there was a second
Sorry,
that was
I was so into my emoji builder. Can you
okay.
recall the question?
Yeah, and I'm trying to look at the both parts of the question. So first part was, can you do an initializer that takes a result builder as a parameter?
So like a result builder in a result builder.
Um, I would understand like an initializer from just a normal type. And then the second part is like convert that from numbers static method into a string initializer. So in a way, I guess you could define like a new init for a string. I guess it's what you try to do at the beginning when you are doing your self equal.
Yeah, right.
And yeah, I wouldn't see like a limitation, but it's very easy to like get carried away when you use these kind of features.
That's definitely true. Um, yeah, so it would be this, right? Like
Yeah.
an emoji to string builder. Let's open the init emoji. This would be the case then. And this would be. Would it work this way?
In a way, I mean, it looks similar to really like to H stack, basically. So yeah, I would say
Yeah.
you can do it, and I would even say it's some kind of a good practice because SwiftUI relies on it quite a bit.
Yeah. Well, I guess it's working.
Yeah, and also something we haven't said because it would like take too much time to just go into all the possibilities, but result builders can also have generic arguments, so it also opens up the way to like even more use cases.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, you can go a lot of ways, right? Like the thing we do now is simply return the result in a way. We don't do anything with the value. You could also say if we were to go back to the number, um, we could multiply the numbers, or
Yeah, you
you
could
could
like
also build in like a filter in this case that would be
yeah like
simple. So
put more logic in the build block, basically.
yeah, like return emoji is so we only want smileys, right? um
So
I
we
guess
only
this should
allow
give only the
happy emoji,
smiley.
and it works. And
Yeah, so yeah, you could limit the output in a way.
I was thinking, so you were saying earlier that we cannot add properties like to configure in a way a result builder. But now I'm thinking actually, as long as all the configuration is entirely static, we could use like a generic type with static properties, and the result builder could read from this type, and basically like the generic argument would be the configuration. So there is still this little room that we could use.
Like a phantom type in a way.
Exactly, exactly.
Yeah, yeah. You could do that. I guess it's only 3 minutes, so that would be a bit
So we
hard.
won't do
But
it doing it today, but it shows like all
yeah,
the potential that there is, and I think we're only getting started to see result builders, and for like people who design libraries and third-party frameworks, I think they're going to become like kind of like a very important part of their APIs.
yeah, I think so. You shouldn't overcomplicate things. I've been thinking I'm doing a lot with NS operations, and I was thinking like, yeah, maybe I can create a result builder where I can add multiple operations, but then it would replace like
Combine.
a simple array of operations.
Oh yes, also.
That that only removes a comma in an array, so that would be a bit too much. But yeah, there are definitely use cases where this can be super super valuable.
And I can tell you, like, I'm super curious to see now that they are finally part of Swift. Uh, have like other teams at Apple started to include them in their frameworks. Like, I'm looking forward to the moment where other frameworks than Swift UI are going to really like start and use Result Builder a lot.
Yeah, right. They can definitely surprise us in a way. I think maybe assertions in unit tests or something, or maybe an URL components extension in a way. I guess there's a lot of room for them to implement it in the standard types. It could be
Exactly.
super awesome.
And I see some questions about the generics, the result builders and generics, and you mentioned assertions with result builders. And actually, that's the topic for me of a future video of showing how to use generics with result builders using this use case of assertions. And I can say that there are some little like unexpected difficulties. So that's why it's going to be like in a video of its own, because it's there is a few things to say.
I'm curious now. I want to see that.
You will see that it's all about the build expression and the way that you need to use it, because like type inference works not the same way than in the rest of Swift when you're in a result builder, and that can be super confusing if you do generics and you need like the content of your result builder to infer some types. So like I hope next week there will be this video, but I'm looking forward to making it.
Sounds good. Well, if you look forward, I'll bet it will be there next week.
So we are getting close to the end of the live. So first, thank you, Antoine, for this great explanation about how to use result builders. So there are a lot of links in the description of this video. So you have a link to the article on Antoine's blog, a link to Antoine's Twitter, also a link to Rocket Sim, Antoine companion app for the iOS simulator that we've seen quite a few this evening. So also thank you all for attending. I think this kind of live coding format during a live stream is very popular, and I understand why, because it's super nice to take the question from the audience and answer them in real time. So thank you all for joining us this evening, and looking forward to see everyone again for a future live. Have a
That's
good
good.
evening,
It
everyone.
was super fun. I learned a lot as well. So yeah, thank you. Nice way to end, right? And yeah, speak to you soon, Vincent. Thanks for inviting me
Speak to
over.
you soon. Bye bye.